So we are going to go to topic number 7. I think this should be topic number 7, whereby we are going to be talking about file handling. All right. So in this topic, we want to explore the capabilities that Python has by looking at the file handling capabilities. So basically, this is an input functionality that Python has. It does not necessarily rely on a third party or module. So let us see what we need to get from this section. All right. So by file handling, we basically want to see the capabilities Python has in reading and writing files. All right. So for instance, we have a file here named notes.txt. So we may want to leverage on Python's capability uh, to read the content of this file. All right. And basically, we are able to use Python to read this content, to copy it somewhere, or basically to manipulate this data as we so wish. All right. So we are going to look at three capabilities of Python within the file handling concept. All right. So the first will be using Python to read the information that is in this file or in any other file. All right. So as a subtopic, we can talk about reading text file. All right. So we need to understand the syntax of achieving this. So we usually talk of, we have with. All right. I'm sure we haven't interacted with that keyword the first time we are meeting it. All right. So then we are going to talk about open. Then in here, we need to specify the file that we want to open. And again, in here, we can mention the path under which the file to be opened is located. So in this case, the file to be opened is within the same directory as our program file here. So I'll just have notes.txt. All right. Then in here, I need to mention the mode. So we have quite a number of modes in here, but as mentioned, we are going to make use of three main ones. All right. So in this case, we are going to read through the file. Okay. Then once we read that, we can read it as file. That's how to reference that. So in here, you have to terminate it with the colon, press enter. Then we create a variable. So in here, we are going to declare a variable that will hold whatever content that our file has. So in here, we can just talk of content. Then we should talk of file, whatever we have mentioned in here. So in case you decided to use anything else here, then should be reflected here. So we want to read the file. So that should be, we should have those parentheses. All right. So once we are able to read that, then from here we can do what we wanted to do with the content of this file. So for now, we may just want to print the content. All right. It should be as easy as that. So remember, to execute this program, you can either use this button or just use the wrong hand method that I usually prefer here. All right. So basically, this is the content of our file here. And again, I can also add in some more content in here. All right. So let me execute it again. And I see that we are now able to see or to read the content of our notes.txt. txt file. All right. So that is one of the concepts that I wanted us to mention. So at least we are able to see and appreciate the power of Python in being able to read through a file. All right. And of course, as we have seen, this is not necessarily a .py file. It can read through um, files of different extensions. Okay. All right, so that's one of the capabilities. The next thing I wanted us to appreciate about Python's capability is being able to write a file. All right, let us see how Python is able to write through a file. So the same thing holds. We are going to talk of with. So let me just have a subtopic here. Want to write a file. So we'll still talk of with. Open, we need to have that. Then in here we need to mention the file that we want to write. So in this case we can mention the current, or we can mention a file that exists, or mention a file that doesn't exist. So what will happen, let me talk of my notes.txt, right? Then the mode in here will be w, all right, because we want to write this file. So we have w in there as opposed to in here where we had r. So the same thing happens. We are going to talk of as file, terminate with a full colon. Then in here we need to mention this file dot right. All right. Then add the content here. Hello world. All right. So what this program will do is that it will check if this file exists. All right. Let us first of all execute it and see. All right. So look, a new file has been created. So what happens when we execute this program is that it checks if this file exists. Then it overrides the content and adds the new content. Okay. So if the file does not exist, then it will create a new file and add whatever content that we have here. Okay. So we may be wondering, like, what if we don't want to, we have an existing file, for instance, we have notes. All right. So we do not want to override that. We want to kind of append what we have here. For instance, let me first of all, I can just copy this to my notes. Let me just have that content here. Then come back here and talk about, let me talk about notes.txt. So let's see the behavior. For now, we can see that notes has up to 8 lines of strings. So I want to write some content on this file. So I want to execute this program and see how it behaves. All right, so we don't get any output, but if we go to notes.txt, we get hello world. So we might not desire to have this. We might want to append, or instead of overwriting, we might want to add the new content to this file so that we have the old content plus the new content. All right, and that becomes the third mode that I want us to look at. All right, so that's how to write content in a file. We may want to, instead of overwriting the content here, we may want to append the new text to the existing file. All right, so in here we still talk of with open. So I need to mention the name of the file, notes.txt. Then in here for the mode, we are going to talk about a, basically meaning append as file. All right. Then the next thing that we need to do is to mention the file. So this file that we mentioned here, let's talk about file dot. We want to write that content, and for now we have hello world. Let me still type in that. All right, so let me execute this. So if I check, we see we have another hello world. All right, do it. Okay, do it again, probably several times. All right, so in here we see that hello world is appearing on the same line, which again, well, it's okay. We have already seen that instead of overwriting the content, it's now appending the new content. All right, so we may want to kind of instead of having our content appear on the same line, we may want to give a line break. So to achieve that, we can simply we can append that. All right, so this will give a new line. For instance, let me have hello world 2 and execute our program again. All right, so if we come in here, then we see that this has taken a new line. So if we execute it again and again, so that is what happens. All right, so we have seen three things that Python is able to do. One, it's able to write into a file, it's able to read the content of a file, and it's also able to append to an existing file. All right, so something else that I want us to look at in here, we talked about reading a file, then in here we have talked about writing a file. So we may want to read the file and also append the file at the same time. All right, so we are going to talk about a new mode in here. It's another crucial mode that we should mention. So this we would term it as read and write mode, whereby we read the content of the file and add in some content in there. All right, so this mode basically allows us to read and write without deleting the existing content. So we are basically kind of making use of these two, but then um, when it comes to writing, we don't overwrite the content. We add new content to the existing content. So the template remains the same. We always talk about with open. Then in here, as we have been doing, we mention the name of the file. Then for the mode, let's talk about that the mode in question that will enable us to read and write the file without deleting the existing content. So this line, all you need to change is the file name or the location of the file and the mode. All right, then to read the file, as we mentioned earlier, we can talk about content and refer to the file that we just mentioned in here, then read and have that. All right, then the next thing that we can do is to append something to that file. So in here we can talk about file dot, we want to write something, and since we said we can add the content on a new line, we can have that. This is new content. Okay, and I think that's it. So let us see if we are able to add more content here without deleting the current content that we have. Let me add some hashtag manually here and see if the new content will appear down here or everything will be deleted. If we execute that, all right, we see we get the new content under this file. All right, all right. So that is it. I mean, those are these are the four main modes that I would have wanted to share with you. I would want to go to the next bit of this topic. The next thing that I want us to check through is something that we had already mentioned. There is a module that we have interacted with in our previous sessions called OS. So we are going to see how to make use of this module to handle files. All right, so let me import OS here and see the capabilities that OS has that we can make use of. All right, so this module, we can use this module to check if a certain file exists. Okay, so for instance, I want to make use of the OS module to check if there is a file named notes.txt existing in my current directory. So let me have a subtopic here, or file handling. All right, so we want to make use of the OS module to check if there is a file named notes.txt file. All right, so we can simply do this. For instance, we can make use of an if statement to check if we want to do os dot. So in here we get quite a number of modules that we can make use of, right? But for now I want to check to make use of path, and there is a submodule that is called exist. So this basically checks if a certain file exists. All right, then in here I can mention the path to our file, and since our file is in the current directory, we can simply talk about notes.txt. Then we can simply print if that file is found, file found. Then we can just have else, we can print file not found. All right, so for now we are checking for a file that we can clearly tell that it exists. All right, so we are told that the file is found. So in case we check on a file that does not exist, then we are told that the file does not exist. All right, so we may want to rename the file using the OS module. All right, so most of the operations that you can either do by using the GUI that has been provided, that is navigate to the file location, right click, either to delete, to rename. We are kind of trying to mimic these options by using Python code. All right, so for now we want to rename. We want to rename that file. We will also delete. All right, we are also going to see how to copy the content from this file to another and all that. All right, so in here, let us extend the functionality of the OS module by renaming the given file. Okay, so we want to check if os.path. So if we have checked whether this file exists. All right, so if it exists, let us go ahead and rename the file. So we would still make use of the os dot, let me mention rename. All right, so in here we want to rename notes.txt and give it a new name. Let me talk about notes. dot txt, and of course we proceed and print file found and renamed. All right, so let's see if we can get such a functionality. All right, so file found and renamed. We see a new file has been created, not really being created, but our notes.txt has been renamed to new notes.txt. And again, this does not only function after we check if the file exists. It can operate as an independent program. Let me just show you what I mean. For instance, I can just execute this program as it is. For now, notes.txt does not exist, but let me just execute that and see what we get. Of course, we get an error, file not found error. And if you can remember how we used to handle errors, all right, let us remind ourselves how we used to handle such errors. So essentially, what we have gotten here, this is not necessarily an error, but our program has crashed. In case this was a kind of a desktop application, it would have stopped working immediately it came to executing this line. All right, so we should be able to handle this so that at least we get some friendly note. All right, so let me talk about try. All right, so we are going to try that, then accept. So we expect that this file might not always be found, so we can talk about file not found error. Then we can print. Let me just talk about error file not found. All right, then in case I execute this program again, at least we see some friendly error. Again, I can just try to make use of the existing file. We have my notes. If I execute that again, of course, no response, but look at what we have. My notes, new notes. All right, so again, this has been moved to new notes. So we had a file named my notes.txt. We have renamed that to new notes.txt. All right, then we may want to delete this file. We may want to delete say new notes. All right, so we can simply talk about os.remove. So by having that, then we can mention new notes.txt. All right, so again, if I execute this program, right, we see that our file new notes is no longer there. All right, of course, it executed all of this. Should have the OS module active. So that's basically some of the use cases that we can demonstrate on the OS module. All right, of course, we have so many things that we can do with the OS module, but that's the few that we can mention for now. We are going to cover some few questions. So I have some 4 questions that I have prepared to supplement this course, and let's see how to go about handling them. So question number one. All right, so this is a word counter. We are supposed to create a program that reads a text file and then counts the number of words and prints the result. All right, so okay, all right, so let me see if I have my okay. All right, okay, I need to create my new I need to create another file here. Let me create notes.txt. All right, and I can add hello world. All right, then our question requires us to create a program that will read through the file and count the number of words and print the results. All right, so we can approach this by using a function. So in this case, having gone through quite a number of concepts, whenever you get a challenge, it's for you to try and figure out what concepts that you're supposed to put together to provide a solution. Okay, so in this case, let me just define a function. So we want to count words. So let me just call it word counter. Okay, then in here I can mention the file. So we are going to pass in the file or the path to the file. Okay, then we will proceed to open the file. So in this case, so that we can take care of scenarios where this file or this path does not exist, we can make use of the try. For now, let me talk of that. Try and except block. So either we try if a file exists, or except if the file does not exist. All right. So in here, let me just print. It's an error. File not found. All right. So in case the file is found, then we should be able to read the content in this block. All right. So again, we'll talk of with open. We want to open that file. Then I need to mention the file. So this file is the file that we will pass in our function. All right. So whatever you mention here should appear here. So in this case, we want to read through the file. All right. We can mention as file. So the same way we have illustrated on how to read through a file. So we can mention content, which is equals to this file that we have mentioned here. And again, I think we should make some changes because so let me talk about files in here. Then I want to read through the content. All right. I hope you have seen why I had to use files. So basically, this is a different name so that it doesn't cause a conflict of what we have already defined here. Okay. Then once we read that, we need to kind of put this content in a way that we are able to count the number of words, right? So all we need to have is content dot split. All right, that should kind of return a list of those words. So in here we can assign them to a variable. Let me call them words. So this being a list, okay, so this being a list, okay, for now let me just print this so that at least we can see the form in which these text will look like. So so I have already defined a function. The next thing after defining a function is to call the function. Then in this function, remember, we need to pass in a file. So the file name is notes.txt. All right, and again, this is not a variable, so it should be in quotes. All right, so let me execute that. All right, so see, this text was in this form, but after reading it through and splitting it, we see that it's now a list. All right, so in here we can now simply kind of find the ranks of this list. All right, so we can talk about, remember how to find the rank of a list. Just pass the list in the len function. All right, so if we execute it again, we see 10. So we can count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So basically, this is simply what was expected of us in this question. So whichever file that we pass in here in this function, we should be able to count the number of words in that file. So if I can do that, and do that again, come back here, do that, we get 30. Of course, I copied and pasted the content 3 times, so that should be it. So that's all that was expected of us in this question. Question number 2. So number 2 requires us to write a script that copies the content of one text file into another file, ensuring that the original file remains unchanged. All right. So again, in here we have another opportunity to combine two modes. One of them is that we will read through the content of the file. Then the other one, we will write a new file. All right, using the content of the initial file. All right, so this is how to do it. So we can do ourselves good by defining a function. All right, so we'll define a function. So let me talk about copy content. I have to give my function a name. Then this function expects us to pass in some parameters. So one, we want to copy the content from notes to, say, notes backup. All right, so again, we can do ourselves good and pass in the origin of the content and the destination. So in this case, the origin will be so in this case, when we are defining the function, we do not pass in we do not have those quotations, sorry. So we can have the source and then destination. All right, then again we will still try and we will still accept in case that file does not exist. So we are going to talk about file not found, and I can just paste this error here, or rather paste this message. So if the file is found, we need to do something. We need to read the content of the file. Let us first of all mention how to read the content of that file. All right, so we are talking about with open. So in here, we need to mention the file that has our content. All right, so in this case, we are going to refer to whatever we pass in through our function. So in here, we have the source. All right, and then we mention the mode. Okay, then we can talk about, so we have been talking about file, so for now we can talk about this being the source as src, short form of source. All right, then we can talk about content is equals to src dot, we want to read that content. All right, then how about if I first of all print content? All right, then I can come in here and call my function. So for the source, we are going to get it from notes.txt. All right, that's the source. the destination, let me call it backup notes dot txt. All right, then from that I can execute the program. Let me see. All right, so we are able to read through the content of notes.txt file. So let me probably have a few lines. All right, so the next thing, now that we are able to read through this file, the next thing should now be taking this content that we have read from this file to another file. All right, so what we need to do, we now need to add a new block. So let's talk about with open. All right, so in here we now need to mention the destination file, because what we did here was we read the content of the source file. All right, now we want to write into a new file. So the new file is the destination. All right, then we need to mention the mode. We have w. All right, then as, then we can talk about destination dest. Okay, then in the next line we can talk about destination, that is dest dot, we want to write into that file, and whatever we want to write the content. So where this content coming from, whatever we have assigned here. So this is basically what we read from the source file, and it is the same thing that we want to copy to the destination file. So we pass it in there, and basically that's it. Maybe we can do ourselves good in here and maybe print something. We can talk about content copied successfully, something like that, just to to notify the user that the copy has already happened. All right, so if we come in here to execute it, see content copied, then let's see backup. Do we have backup notes? So we see we have backup notes, which again, if you look at the content of notes and backup notes, they are uniform, they are the same. Okay, so this is basically again what was expected of us in this question. Just we are able to move or to copy the content of a file from one file to another. All right, so file renamer. So we want to develop a program that renames a file based on the user input. So in here, we want to allow the user to specify the old and the new files. All right. All right. So in this case, let us see what is expected of us. Let us see what is expected of us. All right. So again, we have been talking about functions. We will still create another function in here. Let's see. So we can talk about rename file. All right. So in here we can pass in the old name and the new name. All right, through our function. So let me talk about old name and new name. Okay. Then remember how we used the OS module to rename our file. os.rename. All right, whereby we have the old name and new name. Okay, so we want to at least harden our application, because we would only want this to happen if this file exists. All right, so we can do an if check here. Remember how we did a check? So if a file.path.exists, So if the old name, all right, so that is if a file with the old name exists, then we should go ahead and rename the file. Eventually, after renaming the file, we can talk of file renamed successfully. All right, then the next thing we can, if the file does not exist, we can simply print file not found. All right. All right. Then another thing that we need to mention. Okay. All right. Then after doing that, we can proceed and call our function. So to call our function, we can have file name. All right. Then we pass in the old name. So in this case, the old name, I can mention notes.txt and the new name, new.txt. All right. Then I'll proceed and execute that. All right. So we see that our file has been renamed successfully. All right. So we had notes.txt, but now we have new.txt. All right. So again, we can try to up our game so that we rename a file based on what the user enters. All right. So in here, we can have the old name. All right. We get the input from the user. Enter a file to rename. All right. Then new name, we mention input, enter a new name. All right. So again, in here, we then proceed to pass in the old name and the new name. All right. So let's see how that goes, if it works. So enter a file to rename. So our file is new.txt. Enter a new name. Let me talk of renamed.txt. All right, file renamed successfully. Again, we see that our file has again been renamed to renamed.txt. All right, again, this works, but we still haven't hardened our application enough because, for instance, let me do that. Let me enter a file that doesn't exist, hello.txt. Then new name, hello2.txt. All right. Okay. I believe this is good enough because in here, when we attempt to rename, then it's able to check if the file is there or not. So this is good enough. This is good enough. And basically that is what was expected of us in this question. So number 4, we are supposed to create a simple file management system that allows users to add, delete, and list files in a specific directory. All right. So this is basically a kind of an application that has some multiple functionalities. All right. So one of them, we can mention how to add files. So it's a simple application that has a number of functionalities. All right. So how to add files? We can be able to add files. So in this case, I can talk about creating a function. All right. I'll create a function named, let me create files. I can create a file. All right. Then in here, I can mention, let me see. Okay, so let me mention the directory. Let me mention the directory and the file name. All right. So directory is the exact path. Remember, we have been working with the current path, but we should also be flexible enough to create the new file in any other path. All right. Then the next thing that we need to mention is okay. All right. So we want to ensure that this file name and the path are joined together so that we can have a common path. So let's talk about the path, the full path, and the way to join a file and a path. For instance, uh, present working directory. So we have this particular path, and we on top of this we can create a file named notes or renamed.txt. So we can be able to join this path and this particular file. And this is the command that will help us achieve that. So in here, we need to import OS because we want to make use of that module. All right. So we have os dot path dot join. So in this case, we are joining the directory and the file name. We have the file name in there. All right. So again, the next thing is we want to create a file. All right, and we can do that by open and writing a file. Okay, so in this case, we can talk about with open. We want to open a file, and that file is the file path. So this is not just a file, but it is a file that has an absolute path, which refers to the exact location of that file. All right, so we are going to open that file. Okay, then we are going to do that in the write mode. We want to write some content. In here we can talk about as a file. All right, then the next thing we can talk about file dot. We want to write something, and we can decide to write nothing. Okay, so we can decide to write nothing, either have that, or in here we pass in a parameter containing the content that we want to add to this file. All right, so for now, let me just leave it at that. So again, we can then talk about print file created. Okay, so let's now proceed and create the file, or rather call this function. So this function we have create file. So for the directory, okay, for the directory, let me make use of the current path by simply using a dot. All right, I hope my program agrees with me that that dot refers to the current path. All right, then I want to pass in the file name, create file.txt. All right, and I believe that's good enough. All right, let's try and see if our program works. All right, so we see that a new file has been created in here, and of course with no content. Maybe I should add in something. Hi there. All right, I can remove that file. All right, let me remove it. Execute the program again. Okay, sorry, not that. Execute the program again. File created. If I look at this, we have hi there. So this is simply how to go about uh, creating a file management system that is able to add files. All right. So let us see how to delete files. Then we can have list file as part of your assignment. So that's basically how to create files. And in this function, you can define different locations under which you may want this file to be created. All right. So in this case, I simply used the current path by making use of these dots. All right. So finally, let us see how to create one that deletes the file, one that deletes a file. So again, we are going to make use of the function. Let's talk about delete file. All right. Then in here, let's still pass in directory, and file name. All right. Then let's join the directory and the file name. So I can talk about the file path, and I'll still make use of the OS module. And of course, if you are doing it as a single program, you at least you only need to import OS once. All right, in this case, then the rest should make use of what you have here. All right, so in here we have os.path.join, and we are joining the directory and the file name. The file name. All right, so once we have been able to join that, we then need to check if that path exists. That is the path and the file. So remember how we checked? If os.path.exist, then we pass in the file path. So if that exists, then we can simply talk about os.remove. And what are we removing? We are removing the file path. All right. So once we are done with that, let's simply tell the user file deleted. All right. Then of course in here, in case the file doesn't exist, let us advise the user accordingly. File doesn't exist. So look, we have defined a function, and we have passed in some two parameters. So the first parameter is the directory. So this directory, and just to mention again, is the location. So is a file in home, root, downloads, documents, and all that. So once we move to that directory, what is the file name that do we expect to find? Right? Then we combine the two. Again, somebody here might just pass in file name as the parameter and use the absolute path, or whenever you're calling the function, you provide the absolute path to that file. All right, so it's still the same. So we combine the two to give us a complete path, something like home, user, admin, and maybe now notes.txt. So in this case, the directory is what we have here. All right, then the file name is notes.txt. All right, so that's again what we join to come up with a complete path like we have here. All right, then we go ahead to check if the file exists, and if it exists, we remove the file, and then we confirm to the user that the file has been deleted. Then in case the file does not exist, advise the user accordingly. So once we are done in creating the function, we can then proceed to call the function. Delete file. So we need to give the directory. So in this case, I'll make use of that. Then the file name, let me remove requirements txt. And better still, let me add an S so that the file does not exist. We see if one, we are going to get this. Execute the program. File doesn't exist. Come back here, remove that, execute it again. We see the file has been deleted. Now, of course, we no longer see the requirement.txt file in here. All right. So that's again how to create a simple program that deletes some files. For the rest of the program of listing files in a specific directory, I will leave it as an assignment. Try to do that. See if you are able to achieve that. And in case you get a challenge, just reach out so that we can be able to assist. All right.